Hey everyone, it's Andrew. In this video, let's go over the basics of setting up a cinematic combat sequence for one of our character units. If you need help getting your character set up from scratch, check out the tutorial on adding new characters to XGrid. The link to that video is in the description. Before we begin, I want to outline the stages of production that we'll be going through so that we can keep our discussion structured as we make our way through the code. The first thing we'll do is set up the minimal combat sequence. The minimal combat sequence is simply a bare bones sequence that will apply the combat results of a unit's attack to the other unit without any animations or particle effects. We want to arrive at the minimal setup before doing anything else to ensure that our sequence works at a base level. After setting up the minimal combat sequence, we'll start to put it on our animations and camera pans. Finally, we'll go ahead and spruce up our attack animations and sequences with some particle effects. Alright, so without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the code. Alright, so here I am in the default XGrid framework level, XGrid defeat all enemies, and the first thing we're going to need is a character to script our attack sequence for. For this example, we'll recreate one of the out-of-the-box character sequences from scratch, going over each section of the code as we write it. With that said, let's go ahead and go to our character unit folder. So I'll go to units, characters, XGrid included, and I'm going to go ahead and duplicate Karma's blueprint here. So I'll right click on Karma and I'll click duplicate here, and we'll call this BP Karma 2. Excellent. Now remember, to add a character, we'll need to add them to our character enumeration and create a data table entry for them. So let's go ahead and do that really quickly. Back in the XGrid folder, go ahead and navigate to enums, and we'll go to units, and we'll go to player units, and we'll go ahead and add an enumerator here, and we'll call this Karma 2. Excellent. So that was easy. Let's go ahead and exit out of that, and we can click Control S here to save that. And now what we'll do is add a data table entry for Karma 2. So go ahead and navigate back to XGrid, go to databases, and we'll open up our character data table. And we'll go ahead and click add here. And for the row name, we'll put in Karma 2. And since Karma 2 is just pretty much going to be a copy of the original Karma, go ahead and click on Karma's data table entry here and hit Control C. And we'll go down to Karma 2's entry here and we'll hit Control V. And that will copy everything from Karma 1 into Karma 2. The only difference that we want to have for our Karma 2 is that our name down here should be Karma 2. Remember, this should be the same name as the one in the enumeration. Alright, now that our character is set up, we can finally start coding our sequence. Remember, the first thing we want to code is this minimal combat sequence. This is going to involve a few steps, and I want to briefly outline those steps before we get started. The steps in this outline are a reliable formula you can use for setting up the minimal combat sequence for any character that you want to make with XGrid. First off, we're going to need to override the character unit's execute cinematic attack event. For those who are unfamiliar with overriding, it basically allows us to define a unique script for each of our characters while using the same function call in the battlefield class that controls the flow of attacks between character units in a cinematic sequence. Next, we're going to set 3 variables that we can use to keep our sequence script nice and clean. These variables will be for the cinematic defender, which is the unit the character unit is attacking, the cinematic combat results, which is the structure that holds the information about the outcome of an attack, and finally a boolean to allow a second attack in our unit's combat sequence to be different from the first, if that's something we're interested in coding. In general, we don't want to have long connection wires going everywhere in our code, and we can avoid that by setting some variables at the beginning of the event. For our third step, we'll set a start position for our camera. Our fourth step will be to resolve our combat results. And our fifth step is going to be to inform the battlefield that our attack sequence has concluded. Now, there are 2 scenarios we have to account for when concluding an attack sequence, those being attacks that are fatal and those that are non-fatal. If our attack is fatal, we want to wait until the defeated unit's death animation is finished before concluding the attack. If it isn't fatal, we need to wait until the attacking unit's attack sequence is complete. In the latter case, we may want to add a delay before wrapping up our attack sequence. Alright, now that we have a structured set of goals lined out for making our attack sequence, let's start coding. Go ahead and open up Karma 2's blueprint, like this, and the first thing we're going to do is get rid of the existing attack sequence. So I'm going to go ahead and take everything from here all the way over to here, and I'm just going to go ahead and delete that so that we can build it up from scratch. So the first thing we'll do is we'll right click and we're going to look for execute cinematic attack. Remember, this is the overriding of this event from the parent class, and this is the event that we're going to be scripting in order to get our Karma 2 attack sequence up and running. All right, so now let's move on to step 2, which is to set those 3 variables that we outlined earlier. So what we'll do is we'll grab our exec pen here and we'll say set cinematic defender. And we'll go ahead and connect this to our cinematic target here. The next variable that we'll set is our combat results. So we'll go ahead and type set cinematic combat results. And likewise, we'll go ahead and connect that to the second parameter there. And last, we will search for set is second attack. And we'll configure that with the third parameter. Awesome, looking good so far. Our next step is to set our camera's initial location. We're going to need to access our unit's cinematic character unit in order to do this. So we'll go ahead and search for get cinematic character unit right here. So each character unit's cinematic character represents the character that exists on the battlefield as opposed to the grid. So whenever we execute cinematic combat, what we're doing is we're actually copying these units from the grid onto the battlefield. Each character unit keeps track of their cinematic counterpart through this cinematic character unit variable. This allows us to keep our grid units nicely uncoupled from the units on the battlefield. Anyway, let's go ahead and grab this, and we're going to call this function position camera for combat sequence. Just like that. And we'll go ahead and get our cinematic defender. And we will get this cinematic defender's character unit. And we'll go ahead and assign that to this input here. And since our unit is a melee unit, we'll go ahead and use this default melee enumeration that we have right here. So what this is basically doing is it's positioning the camera kind of low and behind Karma. I find that this is a good angle for default melee units. The camera will follow them as they make their approach, and we provide the cinematic defender's character unit so that we know how to angle our camera towards the enemy unit. All right, so that is it for step 3. We can move on to the next step. All right, so moving right along to step 4. We're going to resolve our combat results on the enemy unit. And to do that, we're going to need to call 2 functions. The first is called play, hit, or dodge. So let's go ahead and look for that. And we'll go ahead and connect that. And the second one is to resolve all of our combat results. So resolve all combat results. And show combat text. So what these 2 functions are doing is this first one is deciding which animation to play for the enemy unit. If they get hit, we'll play their get hit animation. And if they dodge the attack, we'll go ahead and play their dodge animation. And the second one is just applying the combat results to the enemy unit. So that is adjusting health totals and it's also displaying the amount of damage that the attack is doing to the enemy unit as a little text widget inside of the game. All right, so for this first one, we'll need to connect our cinematic combat results. So get cinematic combat results. And we'll need to likewise connect our cinematic defender's character unit. And over here, we're also going to need to grab our combat results and cinematic defender. So I'll go ahead and connect these two here. And we'll go ahead and keep the text size that displays how much damage was done to 48. I think that that works pretty well, at least for our setup purposes. Great, so we just have one more step left, step 5, so let's get into that really quickly. Our final step is to let the battlefield know that our attack sequence has ended. The event dispatcher we want to call here is called Cinematic Attack Complete. So let's go ahead and look for that, Cinematic Attack Complete. And we'll get this call Cinematic Attack Complete node right here. However, as we discussed before, we'll need to branch the code here depending on if the attack is fatal. So let's go ahead and do that. We'll go ahead and grab our cinematic combat results. And we'll drag this pin out here, and we'll go ahead and break those results open so we can see the individual components of them. And we'll go ahead and grab this is killing blow Boolean here, and we're going to go ahead and branch based off of that. So if our attack isn't a killing blow, then we can simply call our cinematic attack complete node. We might want to put a little delay in here. Maybe we delay for 1.5 seconds or so, just so that we're able to have a little bit of time between when the sequence exits and when our attack completes. And up here, we're going to need to account for completing the cinematic attack sequence when the enemy unit's death animation concludes. So what we can do is we can go back over here and grab our cinematic defender's character unit. I'm just going to copy this, and I'll put it over here. And I'm going to go ahead and bind an event to on unit defeated. And this event is called when a character unit's death sequence is finished. So we'll go ahead and grab this little event tab here, and we'll put add custom event. And we can call this conclude attack sequence. And all we need to do is take that event that we had earlier, and we'll hook it up right here. So the other thing we're going to want to remember to do is to unbind this event after we have called our cinematic attack complete. So let's go ahead and look for unbind event from on unit defeated complete. And the event that will unbind is the one that we just bound here. And I'll go ahead and double click and pull this redirect wire out so that it's a little bit cleaner for us. And all right, it looks like we're sitting pretty here. We have our branching complete, so now when our attack is fatal, we'll wait till the death animation plays, and then we'll call that our attack sequence is complete. And if not, we'll give ourselves just a little bit of delay time, and then we'll call the sequence complete node. There is one more thing that I would like to put in really quickly, and that's before we resolve our combat results, I want to put in a little delay just so that we can see a little bit of time between our combat results actually being applied and when our sequence starts. So if we just call this as is, this function will run very quickly and we won't actually be able to see any of the effects of our code. So let's just go ahead and put a little delay in here. And maybe we'll do another 1.5 second delay. All right, awesome. So this is the minimal combat sequence setup. It's not that complicated, I don't think. There are some steps that you definitely need to follow, but everything that we'll do from now on will be surrounding this code. So we'll be trying to figure out, okay, where do we want to put our animations within the context of this code that is necessary for the combat sequence to progress within the game state changes. So let's take a look at what our combat sequence looks like so far with just the minimal sequence setup. So I'll go ahead and attack. And as you can see, we're sort of doing the bare minimum when it comes to Karma's attacks. Karma's just kind of standing there, but she is applying her combat results to the opponent unit, and we've transitioned back into the grid overview. So what we'll do in the next video is we'll take a look at adding animations and camera pans so that we can fill out and build off of our minimal sequence into something that looks a little bit more polished and professional. Thanks for watching, everybody, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.